Hello, everybody. Today it was announced that a protest against the coronavirus policies has been cancelled or banned by the authorities. It expected 20,000 people to come on Saturday to Berlin. This is our capital, so it was to show our politicians that the people were unhappy with the coronavirus policies. I have to say that I have been quiet about the nitty-gritty of that particular topic because I have a very nuanced view, and I'm afraid in this day and age that doesn't market well, to say the least. And also, it is very regional, right? Every different state and every different locality, sometimes the city has different rule from the next, and it is impossible to really give insight into a situation and I don't know, make it relevant for everybody else. And I'm trying to communicate outward, as you can already tell by the choice of the language, right? And of course, another reason is that the exploitation of the crisis is far more disturbing than the crisis itself, and I've made a couple of videos about that. Also, I think over the summer months, our medical staff have learned to deal with the crisis a bit better. The death rate has come down, so it has become a bit less relevant for the political sphere. And additionally, our immune system was better in the summer months, and I'm not quite sure if the spread of the virus in that time period was actually a bad thing, because people just gained immunity against it, or possibly gained some immunity against it. And I was not so much concerned about the spread of the virus within the summer months. Anyway, what's even more outrageous than the ban itself is the reaction by the newspapers. And I want to pick my favorite one, of course, Zeit. There is a guy called Christian Christian Bangle, who grew up in the communist East. So I'm not quite sure. So anyway, his new article is called Neue Härte, which translates to new toughness. So you can kind of get an idea what side he was on. And he says that the protests are far right and racist and so forth. And this, the post-right wing, racist, Nazi flavor of the anti-corona policy protest is good enough for him to get it cancelled. And he compares this to a second protest in the city of Hanau that was cancelled for the reason that Hanau is a hotspot, and the gathering there was actually to prevent the spread of the virus. There are some implications to that which are not directly understood by outsiders, so I have to explain it a bit. Hanau is where a massacre took place a couple of months ago, I think. And this was by a crackpot, a total crackpot. This guy was seriously mentally deranged. And we are not talking about, somebody who has stupid views and has a depression or so. You usually get this label. Somebody is mentally ill when it's an Islamist, and you find out later that he barely saw a doctor and he actually had nothing outside of your depression that almost everybody has once in a while, or some anxiety at some point. This perpetrator of this Hanau massacre was somebody who actually believed his thoughts were read by a football trainer, and that the CIA and other agencies could also read his mind, and also that the US military was having dungeons where they sexually assault children and torturing them and killing them. So it was a bit more deranged than even Kamala Harris. So this massacre by this highly deranged person is used as an example for somebody who was just radicalized by Steve Bannon and Trump. This person would just be the normal, productive individual if it had not been for the right, if it had not been for the AfD and the internet. This person would be perfectly capable of living a normal life, and this massacre wouldn't have happened. This is the kind of storyline, and because this guy attacked Muslims, so it's Trump's fault that his mind was read by the football trainer. Anyway, so Bengal tries to explore this Hanau massacre to say this protest march against a massacre that has already happened was cancelled, and that was a good protest march. And why then should a bad protest march go forward? At first, he attributes the difference in the treatment to federalism, and he affirms because people know somehow that it's constitutional, that it has to do with the Western system and so forth. So he says it's good. It's good that there is some federalism, and federalism, like other democratic principles, like the right to assemble, they are just democratic stuff. So it's good. But he doesn't really go much into explaining why that is. He just moans like, okay, I see how democratic values protect both the neo-Nazis and your normal individual. And of course, he cannot explain why that is good or bad in the first place. And I think the coronavirus should have been the perfect example, if somebody really cared about democratic values, to say why that is. I mean, obviously, Hanau was a place where a lot of people are infected, and therefore stricter policies are necessary, maybe, or at least are more understandable than in places where there are few cases, right? So federalism makes sense because the community is better served by politics that are adjusted to the needs of that local community. If you try to have one policy for too many people at once, it's the fit is much worse. So this would be the explanation for federalism. Everybody who believes actually in democratic rights would have come up with, but he is just totally silent about this. And of course, his estrangement from democracy shines through later in the text, and I'm quoting now him in my translation, but almost verbatimly. These demonstrations of right-wing radical mask deniers could have put into danger Berlin and its inhabitants for multiple reasons. It would have created a credibility problem for politicians. Who is opposed to keep corona rules if such an event is possible in front of the doors of the parliament with the approval of politics? Even a second time. I'm not quite sure what he means with a second time. I'm just translating here. But what shines through here is that he thinks if a protest is approved by the government, then it is the voice of the government. Well, if that were the case, then a protest or demonstration is just always the announcement of the government. And every true demonstration and every true protest would then be an illegal protest, because then you would never get any approval to march or to picket or whatever you do. And then you would have to do everything illegally. So in this reading, the approval of a protest or demonstration would mean that the demonstration in itself is just government propaganda. Then he comes around the corner with a lot of gaslighting that we are used to in Germany. It has become somehow an immoral thing to do, to even insinuate that we are losing our freedoms. Just saying that we become ever more like a tyranny or dictatorship is seen as immoral. So you're just beaten down as a crazy person, as a stupid person. And this is not even discussed, and this shines through in the next quote, which is a bit lengthy, and I will hope to break it down for you. The myth of the tyranny which bans its citizens from protesting with trumped-up threats will make its way through the channels of the mad and the right-wing extremists and land on the smartphone screens of many a once normal person. Nobody can change that. And more gaslighting, it continues with, but here's also the second reason why the ban in Berlin is important. The fear of the anger of the right-wing, ostensibly worried citizens must not determine politics anymore. So ostensibly, it's just, they just have to drag into doubt everything a conservative says. Like, no, these people are not worried at all. And the next time they turn around and say, Steve Bannon and so forth, they are just doom mongers and so forth. They really cannot decide. But everything must be put into doubt, and therefore these people are just ostensibly void. So there's gaslighting going on again, and of course also he tries to pretend that the politics were constantly listening to right-wing extremists, and this were leading politics all the time, and this must stop now. And banning this protest march in Berlin is the first step from stopping to listening to Nazis all the time, which is what our politicians really do, according to him. So the entire political class is supposedly cowed by right-wing radicals. They can barely move without threats and so forth. And he continues with, not in Corona times, when a politically motivated abandonment of epidemiological protections could risk lives, and also not in the Hanau and Halle times, when politically motivated abandonment of the unconditional ostracism of racism has already cost lives. So there's a hell lot of fear-mongering in there. And again, Hanau is this place where the massacre occurred, with this guy who believed that the football coach is listening to him. And Halle was a massacre that actually was committed by a Pittsburgh Schul massacre style dude who was inspired probably by some crappy people on Gap and other places that are similar to that. I'm not shading Gap. I'm also on Gap. I'm actually rather inviting people to come in so that the mix there is a bit better. But you know, this kind of person you have an idea of that was behind a massacre in the city of Halle, and of course he tries to exploit these two things, and he tries to claim that these two things were the same. That one that attributed every vow in the world to Jews, and actually tried to get into a shul where, like, somebody who's just thinking there are dungeons where children are raped and slaughtered by the US military. So this is not the same thing to begin with, and also it's not your everyday conservative. And the second issue is that there is nothing like an unconditional ostracism of anybody, particularly not if you are so deceptive as the left currently is. So if you claim that everybody is racist, then there can't be an unconditional ostracism of everybody. You have to kind of localize the problem again. This entire anti-racism mania is a long and a strange topic. I think we've all have a crib on that anyway. But I want to say that what strikes me with that one, and also with the climate change issue and so forth, there are true cores in there. I mean, let's be real. There are people who hate others because they are Jewish, because they are black, because they are homosexual, because they are Muslims, and it's not about Islam itself, but they just go after everybody. But the thing is that there is this medium-sized or small problem, like let's take anti-Semitism, and they try to expand it, to exploit it for their own purposes. Likewise, of course, temperature is rising, so climate change does happen. There is a core problem, like you have to, build a dam here and there, but that does not mean that you have to follow all the policies. And likewise, this is with the fight against racism. I never follow to the point where somebody suggests censorship, even stuff that I really hate and I'm really concerned about, like anti-Semitism, does not lead me to the point that I ask for people to get shut up. I want everybody to be convinced by good arguments, and I want everybody to be heard at first, and then things get sorted out. And then he gives an example of another protest, anti-corona protest, which forms rather sporadically and unregistered. And he says, and again, there are thankfully not many politicians that demand that these people need to get heard because they have legitimate voice and could otherwise become unapproachable for democracy. So again, here he does not want to acknowledge that people are actually concerned about things. The entire economy is faltering, but they're just feigning. And of course, what also strikes me is that he does not seem to understand that democracy is not a car that approaches any people. He seems not to understand what democracy even is, what the principles are. It's just a thing, or I think, because it's usually in the line of the general propaganda here in Germany, democracy is just a gaggle of people. That's the old parties that are in control of most of our institutions right now. And these people are democracy. It's not some principles. It's not what the Western political system is like. No, it's a number of people. That's democracy. And if these people don't talk to the naysayers, the protesters, then they are unapproachable by democracy, which is just a gaggle of people. And on top of it all, he says that the real people who need protection, Schutzbedürftige, they don't find such defenders in politics. So there are the real people who need protection, and then there are the complainers, the naysayers. Blah, blah, blah. This is quite interesting because Schutzbedürftige used to be the word they use for the refugees. So the refugees are the ones that actually need protection, while your normal citizen that's now losing his job and his entire financial savings and so forth, he does not need any protection. Why is he complaining? Why doesn't he shut up? So it's just some Arabs who need protection, and your average citizen does not. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you soon. Bye.